Hey guys, Penguin here. I am going to start a new series today about the ancient Chinese game of Go, as they call in Japan, or Weiqi in Chinese, or Baduk in Korean. Um, this is going to be episode 1, a bit of an intro to the series. My name is Penguin. I created a new account on the TY Gem server. I started at the lowest level, 18Q, and climbed up to 2 Dan, where I kind of just stopped playing to start making the series. My goal is to help players who, maybe are stuck in the queue, like the double-digit queues or single-digit queue rankings, to help them get into the Dan rankings. And my style of teaching is I try to teach the why behind the Go principles before how and what. What does that mean? Um, there are a lot of resources online and in books on how to do certain openings called Joseki, right? You can memorize a million Joseki. You can memorize a million different Sumego or life and death problems. But it's very hard to bring all of that together and learn how to play the game because you're kind of just learning how to do things rather than understanding what your objective is and how to solve problems to achieve your objective. You know what I mean? So I'm going to try to teach from a top-down level or top-down perspective, and we'll see how things go. 3 things that I don't think you need to reach 1 Dan. You don't need extensive knowledge of Joseki and Sumego. I am so bad at studying. I can count I probably know about 15 Joseki, and when I say know, I mean like I recognize and I can kind of play them out. I personally utilize about 5 or 6, and I think you're gonna see that in the upcoming series. I don't use very many Joseki at all, and you're gonna see me get to 2 Dan, no problem. Tsumego, life and death problems. These I gotta say definitely help, but I don't think they're necessary. There are some very common ones that you do need to know, like the ladder and I guess it's called the net. There are a few, and I'll probably come out with a video on that down the line. But again, you probably need to know about five to 10 of those. So 5 to 10 Joseki, 5 to 10 Sumego. I think you're good to go to reach 1 Dan. The ability to read tens of moves ahead. One thing I kind of run into a lot when I talk with people, stronger players, communicating to weaker players, how to, improve. And a lot of what I hear is get good, kid. Like, I don't think you really need to be able to read that far ahead to be able to reach 1 Dan. Like, honestly, most games that you're going to see me play games, and some of these games are literally like blitz games. Like, I'm playing, 5-second moves, right? I don't have a lot of time to think, and to be honest, I probably don't follow all of my advice in these from these videos, because they're so fast, right? And you're gonna see me make a lot of mistakes, and I'll point them out. But you don't need to be able to read like a monster. Maybe at the pro level, and I think once you reach 1 Dan, if you want to start progressing past 1 Dan, yeah, you're definitely going to need to be able to read. You're definitely going to need to know Joseki. You're going to need to know Sumego. But players up to 1 Dan, I don't want to call them scrubs, but like you don't need a lot to beat these types of players. And I'm just going to try to give you the tools, the strategy, like the thinking needed to beat these players, because you can literally read like 3 moves ahead and win easily. Killer game sense, instincts, fighting spirit, whatever it is you want to call it. Like, you don't have to be good at killing to be able to play at the 1 Dan level. I mean, sometimes you get killed because someone outfights you. It happens. It happens in my games. You're going to see some games where in the opening people play some Joseki or Tsumego that I don't know, and I lose in 20 moves. It happens, right? But don't worry about it. Go play for the long game. You'll beat most players and you'll reach one dan, no problem. Eventually, you know, when you study Sumego, you develop this even more. You study Joseki, you develop this even more. But to reach one dan, not really that necessary. To surpass it, definitely good. What we're going to do is we're going to learn to find triggers. 3 things you need to reach one dan. Number 1, Judgement. On my way to becoming a dan player, I think the biggest issue I've always had was not knowing where to play. Like, until I reached around 1 dan, there were always moves where I was all like, I have no clue where I'm going to play, so I'm just going to stick a move down. That's bad. You never, ever, 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 ever want to have that type of a feeling. If you do, well, that's why I'm making these videos. Number 2, I suggest you should develop a solid style to facilitate practice of fundamentals. Boom, fundamentals. A lot of players I talk to, like, I'll randomly, like, you know, make weaker accounts, right? And then I'll go and I'll just talk to people, and you know, they go, oh, this dude is a 15Q or whatever. He has no clue what he's talking about. And I'll talk to players, right, just to see, you know what people think about or how people view the game, you know. And some guys are literally just like, yeah, I don't go for points, I only kill. And I'm all like, huh. Or some guys are like, I don't go for points, I don't kill, I just go moyo, which is like ignoring everything and playing big ol' frameworks and then suddenly expecting to win the game, right? And I'm just like scratching my head going, what? Or some guys are just like, I just like play and fight. Yeah, I fight, you know? And there's pretty much no sense of goal, no fundamentals. People just go in, play whatever random moves, and then yeah. And I'm not like, dude, you know, there's no matter what style, quote unquote style you play, you gotta have some fundamentals, right? Like, all pro players can play any style they want. Style is a preference of moves, like, once you reach a decision point. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. You want to develop a solid style so you can practice these fundamentals. If you develop like some crazy fighting style, that's great. You know, that style works if you're really good at it, but at the same time, it's not that good for practice. Like, you know, if you want to say, I want to practice making moyos and defending them, or I want to practice handling invasions and all that stuff. You know, if you have a solid style, you can easily just tweak your style to create that situation because you have so much control on the opening, and you can practice whatever it is that you want to practice. And just to give you an example, I myself kind of fell into this hole where I was starstruck by this one dude named Takemiya Misaki, and he played these big ol' openings, didn't care about the sides, he was so different, and then ended up killing everybody, right? And then I was sucked for like a year because I had no idea how to play anything else. Don't get caught in that. Learn how to play solid, learn how to play the game, and then you develop your own style, your own preference of play, right? If someone forces you into a situation where you can't play that particular style, you switch and kill them. No problem. Play simple openings and focus on the middle game. I guess this is kind of like a tack on to a solid style. Playing simple openings prevents you from getting crushed by some complex joseki that someone happened to have memorized or happened to Google up on their screen and just played it and crushed you with it. Just play simple stuff. Again, you'll see me play like 5 or 6 joseki or variants of a particular joseki. Like, in fact, probably more like 3 or 4 in all of my games, all the way up to 1 dan. Play simple stuff, get to the middle game, use your fundamentals, and beat them into the ground. That's what I'm going to try to advocate here. Judging the board. Um, you're gonna see, I'm gonna make other videos, and you're gonna see me kind of do the same thing, like in other strategy games like Dota or Overwatch or whatever. You kind of have to have good judgment. Um, what does that mean, good judgment? Number one, identify immediate threats, right? Immediate threats. What are immediate threats? Things that can make you lose the game right away. Things that can make you die right away. And then once you've identified yours, then identify your opponents, right? What is that? So, number one, can your opponent come in and just kill you? Once you're sure that you're safe, then you look at your opponent and say, you know what? If I play something, can I just kill him? Right? So one is defending yourself from a win condition from your opponent. Number two, finding a win condition. Simple, right? Number two, identify potential threats, yours, and then your opponent's. Similar to the first one, but here it's like, this might be an annoying move. Like they could play there and then start chasing you around. You may not die, or they may destroy your points, or may get into a decent position, and you just don't want to deal with that. Look at that and consider that a potential threat. Or they might cut you. It may not be the end of the world. They cut you. Nothing serious, may die, but again, it might be annoying. That's a threat. And then look for the same thing for them, right? Because those threats, when flipped around, are opportunities for you. And lucky for you, when you're looking at this, it's your move. So if you don't see any potential threats on your side and you see theirs, it's your move to just play them, no problem. Number three, efficient moves. Maybe there's no threat. You know what? Maybe both sides are so solid that there's no real attacking either side. Whoever has whatever your points are is your points. Whatever his points are his points. Now it's time to try to find good moves, right? More efficient moves. The biggest move on the map, and we'll go into that. How do you find this stuff, right? And in this position, or in this step, you kind of want to look at yours and your opponents at the same time, because you're going to see that the best moves are moves where you want to play there to get points and they want to play there to get points as well. So by taking those points, you effectively double the effectiveness, right? Because you take away their points, gain the same amount of points on gain points on your side, so that's a double whammy. Whereas if you play a really big move but they don't really care, then all you're doing is making points, right? Half as efficient. But if you're taking points that they wanted to take or if you're taking points that they wanted in the first place, it's basically getting a kill, right? You're getting 2 points for every one that you've actually gotten for yourself. Pretty good, pretty effective. Remember, list is in order of importance. Okay? Going back to having a solid style, you want to defend before you attack, just because it simplifies the game and you can have more time looking for threats. And when you're super solid and the enemy doesn't have time to attack you, and they can only play like big floppy moves, you actually have more opportunities to jump in and cause havoc in their areas. Whereas if you start attacking things everywhere, again, that style can work, but it just becomes very hard because both sides have weaknesses, or they play solid and only you have weaknesses, and then it just becomes a fight where you're like considering a million different things, and it's pretty hard to actually practice. Just defend first. And I mean, I'll talk about the benefits of defending and having strong groups and stuff later. But for now, take my word for it. So, judging the board. Here's an example of a game I played as an 18Q against I don't know who. Let me see. Yeah. So it's just, a random board position, right? Let's take a look. What are things that can go in your head right now? There's too much going on. There's things everywhere. There's stones everywhere. I'm scared. Can this thing live? Who's in the lead? I can't count. I'll teach you guys how to count, by the way. I have a penguin method of counting. It's probably not going to be very popular because it's super swaggy, but I kind of need a faster way of counting, especially when I play online, because I tend to do a lot of blitzing, right? So I'll go into how to do Penguin style of counting. Gives you a good ballpark, I think. And, how do you keep sensei, right? Like, sensei is the initiative. Like, do I defend? Do I attack? Like, no, they're getting points. If I defend now, am I gonna lose the initiative? All these things could be going through your mind. You know what? Relax. Struggles are real. So, step 1, identify immediate threats. It's black's move. White just played here. You've got a stone that is suddenly come under attack. Black has one major issue. If you look around, is there anywhere else white can play to actually kill black? I don't think so. Right? Like, black's got really solid groups here, really solid groups here. These 3 stones are dead, so white can't really cut anything. White can't sneak underneath. Like, everything is super duper 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 solid. There's no threat for white to play against black. It's just this one dude that can die. Now, white's weaknesses. Are any of white's groups under serious attack? If you look at this one, it's not alive just yet, but it's got extensions coming out. It can come underneath. It can jump out this way. It can just try to start making eyes. These 3 stones are just straight up dead, so who cares about them, right? These stones are super strong. Like, black can kind of poke in and, like, attack a little bit, but white can just extend out and connect or run out. White, this is kind of white's area, so white's not feeling too bad there. This thing is alive. White's got so many stones around here, like, there's no way black is killing much around in here. No weaknesses on either side except for this one thing. So, one immediate threat, and it's yours. You're for sure going to respond somewhere in this area to fix this stone, or to fix this move, right? But let's continue analyzing the board just so we have a better, understanding of how the board looks, assuming you didn't have this weakness, right? So red are threats that white can play against black, right? So just want to take a look. I mean, we already know about this one. It's a critical threat, so let's ignore it for now. White can poke underneath and try to connect to these 3 stones. It won't work, but it's a threat. White can play here and again threaten to cut these 2 stones off. These 3 stones are still dead, but it could be kind of annoying if white plays here. White can play underneath and threaten to connect out or inside or poke through. Another annoying threat. White can play here, threaten to just make something on top to disconnect these 2 black groups and also possibly connect underneath to here. Also quite annoying. And then, white can play here and threaten to cut this thing. All of these are potential threats. Not that many if you look at it, right? This is kind of why you want to start thinking about weaknesses in this way, in this manner, kind of like a heat map or something, because, like, when you look at the board as a whole, like this, it can be really overwhelming, like, oh, there's stones everywhere, oh my god, there's stones everywhere. But then when you start simplifying things, you're like, you know what, I have a weakness here, I've got like 5 potential weaknesses here, and I can really kind of sort of ignore them. Game looks a lot more simple. Then same with white, right? Black has a potential to cut right here. Black kind of wants to destroy this white area, so black can start playing things here. Black can kind of cross cut here. Black can mess around here. But that's about it, right? The game suddenly becomes so simple. So black says, you know what? If I feel that down here is more important, there's really 2 areas that I'm really concerned about. I can start trying to address these 2 areas or this one. These are your, 1, 2, 3, 4 areas, right? It's pretty simple. Defense-wise, I gotta deal with that for sure. And then after that, start seeing if white's gonna start trying to poke at these. But if I can get the initiative, I'm gonna start playing these areas instead. Simple, right? And then, assuming you have no more weaknesses, both sides, now you're trying to find efficient areas, right? And this kind of can go hand in hand. So efficient areas, how I how I marked it is green is kind of where white wants to play to develop his own points. Black doesn't really want to play there because whatever black does in here, he's not going to get many points. Same here, red. Right? Red is where black plays to get lots of points. White doesn't really want to play in those areas to make points himself. He may want to play to destroy the points, but he won't be getting the double whammy points, right? Like we're saying, if you develop this and, you know, both players play in a certain area and they get, double the points, almost like a kill, right? Those are the blue areas. If you look at it, if black plays here, he starts developing big ol' areas on top. But if white plays here, he starts developing this bottom side. Same here, right? Like if black develops here, he starts making this group make more points. And then if white plays over here, he starts making this group make more points. So whoever plays here first is going to start making more points than the other person, and they're stealing points from that person. Or they're stealing points from their opponents. Right? So these purple blue points are the double whammy points, right? Now this is where your judgment has to come in, right? Like usually these are the good points, but sometimes you just gotta deal with something big like this because maybe white can play something that's only for himself. It's a little bit inefficient, but still it's enough to win the game. You gotta look for that type of stuff, right? And yeah, but you know what? This at least gives you an idea. You could say, you know what? There's this big area here that looks really big to me that white wants to start building up. Oops, sorry. There's this really big area here that white wants to start building up. But I also see weaknesses around here. So I can address them. Right? Also, I have this serious move over here, which also, in effect, attacks this weakness, which in effect addresses partially this big ol' weakness and this big ol' profitable area for white. So I'm addressing 3 different issues by playing in this one area. That's a pretty good move, pretty good sequence, right? Or here, I want to attack this area, and I'm also messing around with this area and developing my area over here by trying to find sequences that attack this weakness. Hey, that sounds like a pretty good idea too, right? And that's how you want to start thinking about the game, Like you look at this and you're like, too much going on. I'm just going to guess and play here. It doesn't make sense. Where's my weakness? Here. Any more weaknesses? A few more. Not so serious. What are the big moves? Here. Okay, now I have a good sense of the game. And for my next move, it's a lot more focused when I'm trying to look for a move, right? I'm not going to be like, yeah, everyone is fighting for the center, so I'm going to play in the center of the board because it works to affect everything. You know what? You don't want to be thinking like that. You want to find effective moves that address all of your issues, or as many issues as possible. And that's the fun of the game, I think. That's where you want to be, because I think that's all it takes for players to get to 1 dan. Really, to be able to come up with this judgment for every single move, right? You never want to have a move where you say, I don't know where I'm going to go, so I'm just going to play in the middle and hope. It doesn't make sense. The solid style. Always choose to defend between equal threats. So, like, when you're like this, I would suggest to... Wait, where is it? There. When you're like this, if you have this group that's really weak, and then maybe over here white has something similar and you have the chance to kill him off, I suggest it's better to start fixing your stuff first, just because it makes reading a lot easier. When you're trying to fix your stuff and still profit, it's just a lot of hard reading, and I don't really want to advocate... Well, okay, I'm not going to say reading is bad because I actually really like out-reading people when you're fighting, but for learning purposes, I feel like you get a lot more from just being super solid, super good at fundamentals, and not having to read out 20 move fights and, yay, you beat them because they misread one liberty. How do you apply that to every game? You can't, you know? Um, just develop a solid style, just defend first, and then practice your attacks once you're more solid, I feel like that's just a better way of developing your style. You can always go back and say, you know what, I'm going to start fighting and stuff again once you're better at strategy and fundamentals, because, again, your fundamentals are going to be so good, you can do whatever you want. Know your shapes and play them. If you're not good at fighting, always consider moves that are shape moves. I'll go into what those are later, but it saves you a lot of time, right? Like, you don't want to look at a particular, look at a board position and be like, okay, I know I need to play in this area, but now I have no clue what to do. I'm going to start reading out sequences at random, and that'll be that. Don't do that, right? I'll talk about shapes in a little bit. And then play a territory-oriented game. It's just easier. It makes it so that the early game you don't have to fight too much. You just have lots of strong groups that you can kind of fight against, which makes fighting easier. You have a point lead probably, and generally they have big floppy areas that you can go in and have an easier time invading because your groups are so strong. You know what I'm saying? At least for me, that's the easier way to play. Maybe for you it's not so, and you want to play something different. You know what? That's fine, right? Like, as long as you play something that is pretty solid and you can kind of play a similar strat every game, it gives you something to practice, right? Just don't be like, I'm gonna play random super crazy moves every game and then, roll a dice for the first 5 moves and then figure out how to play the game. Good luck getting better playing like that. Like, maybe you will over time, but that's a really, really slow way of improving, in my opinion. So, simple openings. Learn a handful of Joseki and kind of always use them and stick to them. Kind of learn them inside out, right? Like, for me, I never play the 4-4 move, ever. I know how to invade the 4-4 stone, but I almost exclusively only play 3-4, just so I can practice my other things, right? Like, people can respond in so many ways to... people can only respond in so many ways to a 3-4 stone. I kind of learn responses to each of them. Maybe they're not all ideal, but I just settle real quick and then get into the middle game. Focus on territory, grab the point lead, and force out mistakes. Again, you play solid, there's a lot less room for error on your side, and they have to do bigger, floppier moves, and generally that leads to mistakes, especially when you guys start fighting, because you don't have to deal with as much fixing, whereas they have to fix everything, and you just kind of bounce around and live. Rush for the middle game. I think I just covered it pretty much with my comments in the last one. You settle real quick, you get real strong, and then you start fighting with your strong group, so there's actually less reading involved. Why you want simple openings. This is a random game that I grabbed online. It's a Lee Sedol game against Na Hyun. They're 2 pros. If you look at their opening, there's a lot of stuff to consider, right? Like, black's got stones all over here, white's got cuts and stones and sticking more stones here. They've got, who knows what's doing what, right? Like, black kind of wants to squish this down, but then white's like, I can develop over here, I can jump in and destroy your stuff. Black's also like, yeah, I can also jump in and destroy your stuff. And then white's like, if I settle here, I can start attacking you here. Whose points are these? Whose points are these? I don't even know, right? You can play complex games like this, but it becomes really hard to actually practice your fundamentals when playing a game like this, because this fight over here is going to dominate what you're going to be thinking about and reading. And I'll be honest, your thinking or your reading is probably not good enough. Your fundamentals aren't there. And you're just going to be like, yes, I lived. I don't know the result of this fight because it requires too much reading. and you're kind of straying away from using and practicing your fundamentals. So that's why I kind of want to advocate a more solid game. Just because, you know what, I'm gonna fix this. You have your things, I have my things. Now I'm just gonna start doing extensions better than you. I'm gonna start making territory better than you, and I'm just gonna win because I'm more efficient than you, right? I feel like that's just an easier way of playing or learning how to play the game at first. You can start playing like this once you practice and you get your fundamentals down and you're good at fighting, which will come. I mean, trust me, it'll come. It just comes naturally from playing and studying. But yeah, don't need it to get to 1 dawn, trust me. Shapes. Pretty much every shape is comprised of 2 basic stones, or stone formations. And if you can't read out a particular position, just look for shape moves at random. It'll save you a lot of time and kind of guide you in the in your search for the right path to even read. So just yes, and then eventually, you start playing, and then I'll go over this in another video. Weaknesses to shapes, saves you a lot of reading power. If you see a shape that you've made and they have a stone in a position that's near it, you kind of, if you already have something like a sense that, oh, this group is in trouble, you can start reading it out, right? Like, it's just yeah, just a bit of practice looking at shapes and knowing how to handle them. So 2 stone shapes. Pretty much every shape that you play in the game is going to be made of a combination of these shapes. For example, a wall is 2 of these. You can also have a wall with a diagonal. You can have a wall with a single extension. You can have a wall with a night jump, or a different night jump, or the bigger night jump, or a bigger jump, or a big night jump this way, right? And don't just think of them in this orientation. Like, think of them in different positions, right? Maybe this is down here and it's covering the corner. This is a corner move. Or maybe it is going this way and it's attacking something over here, or it's running, right? Try to think of like this group, right? This is actually pretty common formation for trying to settle against the side of the board, right? Same with this. This looks a lot like a corner grabbing move, doesn't it? There's a lot of different ways to look at these shapes, but pretty much every move you play in this game is going to be these types of shapes. So when you're in a position, you're trying to fight, right? Like, and you're like, oh man, there's so much here. I can't figure out where to play. Start looking, going, you know what? 2 stone, 2 stone, 2 stone, 2 stone, in every direction, and be like, oh, maybe this will work. And that'll guide your direction of thinking and reading, right? Before you have this like fighting sense where you're just like, oh, the sequence just popped out at me. If you don't have that, start looking at 2 stone shapes to develop these, different possible shape moves. Maybe you're attacking, maybe you're building a base on the side of the board, right? Lots of different things you can do with shapes, and they're all built from this, right? I guess a little bit of a tip from me when it comes to learning how to fight or learning how to settle or getting yourself out of trouble. Just look for shapes. And you know what? Worst thing that can happen is you play a shape that, maybe didn't apply to that situation, and you lose. And then you lose. You remember, and keep that in your pocket for next time, because trust me, that shape in that situation will come up again real quick. Up next. So I'm going to be using 2 games from my 18Q series to demonstrate Judgement. Just straight up Judgement. Like, we'll leave shapes and all that stuff for later, because I kind of want to give a more in-depth, I guess, review of how I prefer to judge the board, every move, right? I'll probably go through like, the first 30 to 50 moves in each game, just to show you, like, every single move, you can go through this thinking, right? And I found that 18Q is filled with a bunch of sandbaggers on the TY Gem server, so yeah, I was actually going to start doing game reviews right away, and I was like, this does not look like an 18Q game. Like the guys were like actually able to do some pretty complicated fighting and reading, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna use these games as more of an example because I kind of want to start, you know, giving examples of how to beat each skill level, right? If you're like a 14Q, you want to beat 15, or if you're a 14Q and you want to beat, you know, a 13Q, I want to give you some some uh some games to at least demonstrate. You know what? This is how you can consistently beat 13Qs, right? Without having to outread them. You know, because you don't need to. Anyway, thanks for joining. That's all I have for today. Peace. Pedwin out.